the skin I'm in. Hello everyone, this is my lovely friend Kathleen Baird-Murray.
Hello everyone, hello Kay.
And today we're diving into the makeup bag of Gen Z. That's Vive, Rare Beauty, Elf, Summer Friday, Rhode, my new favourite Merit, and one I might be too Gen X to pronounce, Refi or Refi. Kathleen, introduce yourself.
I am your average multi-hyphenate. I started out as a journalist 30 years ago and very quickly specialised in beauty. And I've been really lucky to work for magazines like British Vogue, where I'm still a contributing beauty editor, but I also write for publications like Financial Times.
There we go.
I like that. That's really nice what you did.
This is one called Skin Dew.
So some of the other hyphens, besides being a journalist, I have been a podcaster. I had 2 seasons of a podcast that I did with beauty founders called Keeping Face. You got to kind of learn about everybody's, I would say, points of pain and how they got around them. And then I've written books. I have written some scripts. I would say words and storytelling, and I'm really lucky to have worked with some very talented people in this very kind of rich cultural world.
How many books have you written?
I've written 3. I've sold about £2.50 worth of books. So books are really hard work.
That's more than the rest of us.
Books are hard work. They're very satisfying. You kind of don't go into it for the money. What's that?
This is Elf Soft Glam Satin Foundation. I'm loving Elf. I discovered them whilst perusing Superdrug because one has to save money where one can. I was finding all these great new products, clearly designed for Gen Z because of the sheer amount of eyebrow stuff to laminate, to thicken, to stencil and define and to hold in place. Meanwhile, you were also writing the same thing for your Substack.
I was really curious because I felt like there were all these new-ish brands. Some of them have actually been going for quite a while. And I felt that I had somehow boxed myself in a bit with my own. Obviously, I get sent a lot of products as beauty editor. I love all the newness, but I definitely have favourites that I veer towards. Brands I would say like Western Atelier or very much makeup-led brands.
You feel a bit special wearing, right?
Exactly. And I thought the problem is you can be a bit ageist about brands that perhaps look a bit younger or market themselves to a younger audience.
Yeah.
When in actual fact, the palette of colours that they offer are often just as wearable, whatever the age. It's just we don't kind of think about them.
All the new Rimmel stuff that I hadn't bothered looking at Rimmel for years. NYX, I found some really great concealers.
You were saying that one of the reasons I have such dark under eye shadows, which are hereditary, my daughter's got them too, is because of the shape of my eyes.
That's right. Like me, you've got big eyes, and big eyes just tend to have deeper sockets. And that means also, because you're olive like me, it goes a bit grey. You need neutralising, so it's not about heavy concealer, it's about using the right colour. And that's why I love mixing this one with the Elf one. That together is exactly what you and I need. You and I, funnily, we discovered today, have got exactly the same skin tone. So this is wonderful because I'm basically using
things that you use?
Yeah, all the process that I use, which gets rid of the grey. And I think you look fantastic.
No, you've done really well.
That alone, with a little bit of prune blush, would be your everyday, wow, Kathleen, you look amazing. And you're like, I haven't slept.
I haven't slept.
No, but no one would know because you've got your apricot brightening under eye concealer.
Love
and
that.
your cream blush. And that's all we need. It's about having really effective products rather than having
lots of them.
Yeah, you're a beauty editor, so you know when you write copy, you think everyone wants to know about the next new thing that's really going to make a big difference. Whereas actually, in my experience, the thing that makes the most difference with women that I work with who aren't models and aren't actresses and aren't used to having makeup on is things like a great concealer. They're like, wow, I look so good. You know?
It's funny, isn't it, how even if you know, you can still have those days where you can't find your proper concealer, so you'll use something else, or you'll just think, oh, I'll use a bit of stick foundation, or I'm very sloppy, I suppose is the word. And you can make those cuts, and then when you get it right, it just makes such a difference, doesn't it?
It makes a huge difference.
What are you using now?
This is Rhode. I never know her name.
Hayley.
Applying it with a nice big soft brush to the apple of your cheeks. I won't forget this product though.
Actually, I met her once and I had a stinking cold, and you know how sometimes Americans can be a bit scared of people with germs? She was so friendly. It was like there was nothing wrong with me at all. She was so friendly and welcoming and completely put me at my ease. And I thought, good for her. Nice, polite young lady.
I'm not very good with keeping up with all of these names because I don't watch any reality TV and I don't look at certain Instagrams and I have no interest in a lot of that side
And
of culture.
that is why we're doing this.
Which is why we're doing this. And I have to say, this is a fantastic product. Look at that. So look how well you look. I'm so impressed. You don't look like you've got any makeup on. You just look really healthy.
Can I come here every day?
Look at this. And this is brushes. I'm just really into Gen Z makeup right now. Get your glasses out.
Okay.
Get.
Yeah.
We've just discovered the real barrier to Gen Z makeup. We can't bloody well see. It's all written too small. That's the problem. We can't see. So I've just been trying to find out what this blusher is. I can just about see it. It's called Sleepy Girl, right?
Pocket blush, sleepy. Gosh, that's tiny.
It's tiny. So that's the only barrier, ladies, that there is to Gen Z makeup for Gen X. There are all of these wonderful brow products that we were missing out on. We just had eyebrow pencil, that was it. And then maybe a few years ago, there was sort of clear mascara. We need more brow help than 20-year-olds, thank you very much, because we've over-tweezed in the 90s.
I didn't over-tweeze in the 90s.
Didn't? Oh.
My mother made me promise to never touch my eyebrows. Luckily for me, Brooke Shields was the pin-up girl for brows at the time. And she had these incredible eyebrows, so I kind of didn't really mind having my big old bushy eyebrows. And as I've got a bit older, I've noticed they've lost a bit of vitality. So I just go to Blink Brow Bar and I get them threaded and I get them tinted. And I find that does all the hard work for me. So, okay, we started with the Vive base.
Yeah.
But then you put another base on top. You put some of the e.l.f. We put also the Vive Dewy Skin Finish.
That's right.
Oh no, that was a primer.
That's right.
So why did you use so many different mediums to create what I would call a very natural looking base?
Firstly, I did actually want to try them all out. You're my guinea pigs. I also wanted to discover what they all did.
Yeah.
I love this one. That was the last thing I did, and that's really framed the edge of your face.
I think I have my eyes closed.
But it's really glowy and very sheer. So
It
it's
is
not like
nice.
a sort of dense contouring product. It's not a contouring product. It's actually just a bronzer.
Yeah.
But because it's quite olivey and not too brown, it's really natural looking.
No,
So
really
that's
natural.
why. What do you think of the Kylie makeup?
Okay, so none of these colours, I've got to say, are doing it for me. Yeah. I'm not a big monochrome tan person.
Right.
And
But
it's such a big thing.
It's a big thing with Gen Z. We used to call heavy natural.
Which is also basically monochrome tan.
Yeah.
Does it suit you? Because you're the same
It
colour.
suits me, but it's just not my aesthetic. I don't want heavy natural and all looking browns. I'd rather have transparent skin and the heavy makeup just on the mascara or just on the...
Yeah. Don't get me wrong, sometimes I like a bit of tan in an outfit.
Yeah.
But it sort of just blends into my skin.
Yeah.
So there's nothing that shows.
I think it's, to be honest with you,
boring.
I would actually branch out and say I think it's a bit aging.
Really?
On our skin.
Recently, I've also become a brand founder because I just launched my own fragrance, which is called Catch Me If I Fall.
And I have it here.
Ta-da!
Kathleen just gave me some. Oh my goodness.
Can you get it out of the box?
I can get it out of the box. Oh my goodness.
Well done.
And look at that gorgeous bottle. You know what? The bottle reminds me ever so slightly of Diorissimo years ago.
Well, that's a great
which
comparison.
I'm really sad is not here with us anymore. I love Diorissimo. But anyway, this has got that lovely, what would you call that? Beveled
Ribbed
glass?
glass, I think it is.
glass. It's a beautiful bottle. Let me smell. Oh, it's heaven.
So the fragrance is inspired by my heritage, by my grandmother, because she came from Myanmar.
Gorgeous.
And so there's lots of jasmine, neroli, bergamot, green leaves, but there's also things like a little bit of cardamom in there and some sandalwood, which is very warming and heartfelt. And so there's this kind of mix of, I guess, luminosity and freshness at the top, then the heart of jasmine and iris and freesia, and then you go into this kind of very warm base, which is like having a big hug, I think.
What was your inspiration behind making?
Inspiration was my mother's story, because she came from Myanmar, and it was from her mother. And it's a very lovely story. It's a very long story, but it's a very lovely story.
The perfume. How did it come about?
Gosh, that's a good question. So it's the slowest perfume in the world because I started making it 10 years ago. I had wanted to do something that was about Myanmar or Burma. That's the old-fashioned name for it, because that's where my mum came from, and I had visited it when I was in my mid-20s, like 24, 25. I went back there, and I was the first person in my family to meet all my mother's relatives, because she had been separated from them for about 30 years. So her mother was what they call a cheroot roller. She used to work in a village. She used to sit on the ground rolling cheroots for a living. And one day, the story goes, my grandfather, who is Irish and who worked for the Burma Frontier Service, he rode into the village on a big horse and literally just picked her out because he thought she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen, which she was. When I see pictures of her, she was stunning. And he married her. She was very young. They had 2 children, Patricia and Maureen. And sadly, their marriage didn't last. And before they broke up, he arranged for Patricia to be adopted by his mother, who was still in Dublin. And my mother, no one would adopt her. So she was sent off to the Hill States, which are much cooler. She was in Colour, in a convent boarding school with lots of other children who were sort of Anglo-Burmese or English, Irish, etc. And then the war came along and her parents by this stage had separated. She hardly saw them and she didn't know what had happened to them. And she only found out after the war, when the Red Cross delivered a big stack of letters, that she had a sister who she'd sort of forgotten about because they were very young when they were separated. And Patricia and her grandmother had been writing to my mum, Maureen, and saying, we're going to get you back to Dublin. We're going to send a ticket for you and you'll be on a ship and we'll get you here. And she was so excited. So when she was given the choice, because she now knew that both her parents had died in the war, it was a very sad story. And she now knew that they were not there. And so she made the choice, rather than stay in Myanmar, she would go to Dublin to be with her sister, which was a choice that, you know, she was very happy to be with her sister and to get to know her grandmother, but she definitely missed her Burmese roots because she'd been there, I would say she was about 13 by now. So this was a story that was playing in my head. And of course, when I went back to Burma, to Myanmar, and I met all my relatives.
And that was the first time you'd gone back?
It was incredible. I would have been about 24, 26 around that time. I was living in London, I was living in Portobello. And so it was such a different world and everybody was just so loving and warm and welcoming and kind. And
you didn't know what to expect at all, did you?
I didn't know what to expect because Myanmar was a very closed country back then. The junta was in power. Since then it's had several different stages of movements, first towards democracy and then back now sadly away from it. So and of course there was an earthquake just a few weeks ago, so it hasn't had the easiest ride, that country, which is a shame because it's so beautiful and the people are just the nicest people. And I'm still in touch with all my cousins.
So you found all of your family there, obviously. Were you in touch with them before?
No, not really. My aunt, I later found out, Auntie Patricia, had been in touch. She'd written a letter to one branch of them. And I think my mum had maybe had a letter around the same time as Patricia, a few years prior to that. But basically we had this letter with this list and we had to find them, myself and my mum's old school friend, Mary. She'd been left in the convent as well. And so we set off and we kind of travelled to the town where we thought they might be, Chauk, and then we had to ask around. We had to ask, there was a very holy Buddhist monk who helped us. There was also a hairdresser who helped us because obviously hairdressers have the intel on everybody everywhere. It's a universal truth. So we found them and it's lovely. My sister went back. She brought some of the family back to visit here. My brother has been there. Some of my cousins have been there. So it's just like the biggest gift to have had this very otherwise quite conventionally English white upbringing and then to have this like kind of magical world given to me at an age when I was a bit more receptive to it, you know, between 17 and 26 was really when I first started to get interested. My mum had written a book.
When did your mum write this book?
She wrote that, I think, after I'd been to Myanmar, but she had started writing it before. So we were all curious. We were like, well, you know, what is this? Like, where is this Burma place? Because we didn't grow up eating Burmese food or speaking the language or anything like that.
Was she quite quiet about Burma then?
She had completely, when she came to Dublin, she had to fit in. And this was the 50s and
that's just real first generation behaviour. People rarely teach their children the language. And it's the same with religious refugees as well. And it's second generations who don't have that same trauma.
For me it was just a fantastic place of discovery and the connections that it has given me. This other dimension to my family has just been wonderful. I knew I wanted to make something beautiful. Not enough people know about this country. I want to tell them about it. And I started working with Frank Volkel, who's an incredible perfumer. At the time, he had just made Santal 33 for Le Labo, and everybody was wearing it, which was very kind of intensely rich in sandalwood as a fragrance, and beautiful fragrance. Anyway, and so I got to know him through Skype calls. This was before Zoom. And we pieced things together. He asked me the kind of notes that I liked, the notes that I didn't like. And then I sent him a box of treasures. And in that box, there were some sandalwood prayer beads. There was a little book of photographs that showed him all the colors, because there's a sort of a gentle madness about Myanmar. There's like you get sort of bright neon lights in the temples next to this delicate gold leaf. You get the kind of the dust of the rose next to these very beautiful, fragile jasmine flowers. Then they've all been threaded together on a string, which people make as offerings. So I loved this kind of mix of fresh and dust and humor and things that were sacred. And we worked together with that box. Once he had that, he was able to he had something tangible. We went back and forth a few times, and he made me this beautiful fragrance. So, you know, there were a few iterations, a few attempts to get what we wanted, but he pretty much nailed it after really quite quickly, actually. That surprised me. And then 9 years later, because it took me that long, I had to raise funds to bring it to life. I had to find people who believed in it as much as I did. And there were sort of several world crises in between, global pandemic, obviously. I had a lot of things to contend with, things that were happening in my life as well. Happily though, it's now here. So we launched last September. We sell at Estelle Manor in Oxfordshire. We sell at Hotel Chelsea in New York. And there are going to be a few wonderful destinations coming its way later this year.
Tell me about the name. Why Catch Me?
I'm glad you asked me that. The Catch Me If I Fall, I had worked out everything. The name of the brand was La Pyae, which was my cousin's nickname. It means full moon in Burmese. But I hadn't worked out the name for the fragrance. And I'd been through quite a lot personally at this stage of my life. I'd been divorced. I had gone through bringing up my kids who were teenagers, which was not always easy. You know, various other things going on. And one day I was over at my boyfriend's flat. I was mucking about on this big yoga ball, and I thought I might fall. And I shouted out, he was in the kitchen, he wasn't listening. I shouted out, "Catch me if I fall." It just hit me. I thought to myself, that is exactly what we all need in life. We need that person. It doesn't have to be a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or it needs to be somebody who loves you, no matter what you're going through. No matter, you might be a bit difficult or objectionable because you're a bit stressed or a bit down. They still love you. They always have your back. And I thought that's what we need. I think having been through that time, I was just so grateful to have people in my life who would catch me if I fall. My children, my boyfriend, my family, colleagues at work. I don't have my parents anymore. I wish I did. But I still feel like they watch me from above and send me bits of good luck. So I felt like this is what we all need.
It's really good to mix things up. Thank you, Kathleen. That was really fun.
So nice. I am really loving myself.
I love you too. You look amazing.
I just wish I could do this every day. But I can now, because I'll have a tutorial.
Because you've got the tutorial. Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen.